So again, welcome to this YouTube channel, and I hope that at least one of the strategies we're about to share resonates with you and makes a difference in your life. Remember, take at least one bold step towards your goals. And be sure to watch the entire webinar, not only because we offer lots of great tips and advice, but because I also make a special offer. Thank you so much for being here, and thank you to Christa for the opportunity to share with you. As Christa mentioned, my name is Sade, and I am going to come to this topic from the perspective of my experience as a business coach, as an entrepreneur, as an attorney at law. Christa would have presented a kind of definition for imposter syndrome, and I want to layer this one on top of it. It doesn't necessarily say drastically different things, but it's important to name this, to put a face to this, to put a set of lines around this feeling as much as possible. So imposter syndrome is a collection of feelings of inadequacy, and they persist despite evident success. So I want you to remember that. You're feeling this way, you're feeling inadequate despite evidence to the contrary. Imposters suffer from chronic self-doubt and a sense of intellectual fraudulence that overrides any feelings of success or external proof of their competence. So sometimes that may sound or look like, I'm not good enough. You know, Christa said something earlier that I really want to zero in on when she talked about asking whose voice that is. Sometimes it's your own voice, sometimes it's a family member, sometimes it's a friend, sometimes it's as an intimate partner, but whoever is the embodiment of that voice, you know, the voice is essentially telling you that you're not good enough, you don't know enough about XYZ to do 1, 2, 3. It's not perfect yet, so you can't put it out there. You can't achieve what you want to achieve with your talent, with your purpose in life, because it's not perfect yet. Another one that, you know, I personally struggle with is, you know, who am I to XYZ? You know, who am I to talk to you about imposter syndrome? Who am I to, you know, advise on this particular issue? Who am I to address this matter? Another one is so-and-so is an expert, but I'm not. So that comparison between you and someone else. And also it's, you know, holding yourself to this impossible standard where you're thinking about all the things that can go wrong and the consequences of if you don't live up to your own expectations, your own impossible standards. Now, before I go any further, I just want us to name that feeling that we're having. So I want to encourage you to use the chat. So keep using the chat and, you know, identify the number that resonates most with you. So each of those voices that I would have mentioned, you know, there's a number attached, you know, just use the chat. Which one of these resonates most with you? Which one of these is most familiar to you? You know, if I've missed one, feel free to add the one that kind of haunts you so that we can start to name and identify that voice that isn't encouraging you, but is essentially saying to you, you can't do everything that you were created to do. So these are all familiar things that we are all grappling with, right? So that's another thing I want you to kind of look around that chat room and recognize that this isn't something that just you are dealing with. This isn't something that just Christa or myself, this is something that everyone is dealing with. Not just the ones who are talking about it, but even the ones who are saying nothing. You know, this is something that is common, it is normal, and there's a way to cope with it. So I want to start going through some response strategies. I've identified about 8, and they're going to build on everything that Christa said. The first one, I love to start here, is mindset matters. And I start here because it is not what you are that is holding you back. It's what you think you're not. And I'm a firm believer in the law of attraction and the fact that thoughts become things. So if you allow that voice that's saying all those negative things to you to become the dominant voice in your head, to become the voice that dictates what you can and cannot do, then guess what? You're going to have more of those voices, you're going to have more of those thoughts, And you're not going to be able to fulfill your true purpose. You're not going to be able to deliver on some of the things that you've set, some of the goals you've set for yourself, achieve some of the things that you want, because your mindset from the outset is wrong. Your mindset from the outset is holding you back. So I want you to remember, it's not a matter of, you not being good enough. It's not a matter of you not knowing enough. It's really you telling yourself that you are not enough. And what you think you can't achieve will eventually manifest itself. So going back to what Christa said about speaking positivity in your life, there's real power in the tongue. There's real power in affirmations, in articulating what you want for yourself. And it's not just in hearing it out loud, it's in resetting your mind. And before I move off this point, I just want to make the point that we're not necessarily talking about killing imposter syndrome. We're not talking about eliminating imposter syndrome. We're talking about unmasking it. We're talking about identifying it for what it is and learning to cope with it. So with that, I want to move to the second strategy, which is managing your expectations. And this is more than just giving yourself grace. It's about giving your vision permission to evolve. So sometimes we get an idea of what we want to give to the world, what we want to deliver, what we want to achieve. And we get so stuck on it that if it doesn't go according to plan, or something happens that, takes you off course, then we can't move. We can't pivot. We can't move past it because we're so fixated on everything that is going wrong. And going back to another point Christa made earlier about celebrating these small wins, that's something that's really important for helping you to recognize that even when something goes wrong as at the absolute worst possible time, there's still a lot more that has gone right already. And I think it's really important that we pay attention to our journey more so than our destination. Because sometimes I feel like if you get very stuck on the destination, sometimes you forget how far you've come. And if you can keep front of mind how far you've come, you'd recognize that you didn't come this far to stop, and you didn't come this far to let that voice dictate how much further you would go. So on this point, I want to move from this point, but one last idea I want to leave with you is that delay is not denial. And what you may perceive to be a failure, or what may in fact be a failure, it's an opportunity to pivot. And, there's a saying that, I don't lose, I learn. And if you start to celebrate your wins on one hand, but treat your losses as lessons, your entire mindset starts to change. That duck starts to look like a rabbit. So the third, and for me, the most important of these strategies is done is better than perfect. Now, Christa talked earlier about the type A personalities and blah, blah. I raised my hand. I don't know if there are any other type A personalities in the group who self-identify as type A. Let me know if I'm alone in here. I am definitely a type A personality. So I will stick a project because it's not perfect, it's not good enough. And I tell people all the time, I hold myself to a higher standard than anybody else in the world to hold. And because of that, sometimes I don't put out something, or I don't produce something that is good and necessary and worthy, because I am chasing perfection, this impossible standard to hold myself to. And I know that that is not unique to me. And just as I am still, this is something that I definitely work on constantly. I reach out to Christa ever so often, and we work through it when I need that additional help. But it's important for you to remember from a coping perspective that perfection is an impossible standard to hold yourself to, and that sometimes perfect is the enemy of good. It takes away your opportunity to, as I mentioned before, to pivot. It takes away your opportunity to reiterate. And sometimes reiteration is often a better approach for growth, a more purpose-driven growth, more effective growth,
because you are not just doing it once from one perspective, but you've done it a few times. You've gotten the opportunity for feedback. You've gotten the opportunity to learn. Even as you evolve, your vision should evolve as well. So done is better than perfect. And I want to encourage you this evening to whatever you're sitting on. And I'm sure every single one of you in this chat is sitting on something that you are chasing perfection for. And there's a way for you to put that out there. Is a way for you to treat it as done and allow the process of reiteration to occur so that you can improve on it from a more informed perspective and stop holding yourself back. So while I move on to the next point, I want to circle back to the chat. Let me know what you're sitting on. Is there something that you're sitting on, something that you're holding on to because you're chasing that perfection? Is there something that you could complete, something that you can deliver, something you can achieve, that chasing that standard of perfection is preventing you from ticking that box? Let me know what it is. Let's talk about it. Good. So Faye says 2 business ideas. Faye, don't sleep on yourself, right? You want to bet on yourself. I'm going to come back to betting on yourself. But when you are, Pierre, do your homework. When you are struggling with imposter syndrome, something that I personally find very helpful is talking to a professional about it. Now, I know on an intellectual level what imposter syndrome is. And I know on an intellectual level, these are the coping strategies, blah, 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 blah. And, I try to practice what I preach. But there are times where I fall so deep into that rabbit hole. I have to pick up the phone and I have to call Christa and I have to say, Chris, I need your help, I need to get out of this hole. I need to talk this out with you. And there's no shame in that. It's actually a very healthy response strategy. It's commonly said that it's also commonly said that you don't have to go through something in order to grow through it. So sometimes expert advice can save you time, it can save you money, it can save you stress by helping you to navigate these challenges and come out on the other side quicker, more effectively. And maybe you don't have access to someone like Christa, professional like Christa, but sometimes it's a business coach, sometimes it's a family member, sometimes it's a friend, a partner. But the important thing is to talk it out with someone who is going to help you to reorient your mind and get yourself in a different headspace. But even as we say that, I think it would be remiss of me not to mention the need for discernment. And I mentioned that because going back to the point earlier about whose voice are you hearing, sometimes the source of that voice, sometimes the embodiment of that voice is someone very close to you. Sometimes it's a family member, a partner, a friend, whoever, a colleague. Sometimes it's someone very close to you. So you have to be careful who you go to when you're on that slippery slope. You don't want someone that's going to push you further. You don't want someone who is going to make a bad situation worse. You want someone who's going to uplift you. So surround yourself with persons that can be there for you in the way that you need when you're in this particular headspace.